The command center fell completely silent. Every delegate, every military officer, every technical specialist stopped what they were doing and stared at the tactical displays. Two massive fleets, representing civilizations that had been on the brink of war just hours before, hung motionless in space around the Kethmore system. Hana sat at her communication console, surrounded by screens showing the positions of over 200 warships. Her hands rested on the control panels, but she felt perfectly calm. All the years of study, all the sleepless nights analyzing alien languages, all the moments of being dismissed and ignored had led to this single instant. 20 seconds, she announced to both fleets. Captain An Ji-young's voice crackled through from the destroyer Inchin's blade. Joint Command, Alliance destroyers are in position on the outer perimeter. All escape routes are covered. 15 seconds. Hegemony Battle Commander Zekthal reported from the heavy cruiser Darkstar. Joint Command. Hegemony assault ships have target locks on the main criminal base. Weapons are charged and ready. 10 seconds. Hana could see the criminal organizations, ships on her displays scattered throughout the asteroid field like frightened insects. Some were trying to flee toward hyperspace jump points, but the Alliance fast attack ships were already moving to intercept them. Others were powering up, weapon systems preparing to make a desperate fight of it. 5 seconds. She looked around the command center one final time. Admiral Kavreth stood beside her console, his scales now a steady blue color that indicated confidence and determination. Chancellor Morthak's holographic image showed the same calm focus. Even Chancellor Ixara's crystal form had stopped its nervous flickering. For the first time since she had arrived at the Galactic Council, Hana felt like she truly belonged in this room. "All ships," she said, her voice carrying across space to thousands of military personnel from dozens of different species. "Fire." The tactical displays exploded into light as the combined fleet opened fire. Alliance energy weapons carved brilliant lines across the darkness while hegemony particle cannons painted the asteroid field in streams of bright plasma. The coordination was perfect. Every shot carefully aimed to avoid hitting friendly vessels while devastating the criminal targets. The main criminal base, hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, lasted less than 10 seconds under the concentrated fire of the hegemony heavy cruisers. The asteroid cracked open like an egg, releasing clouds of debris and atmosphere into the vacuum. "Direct hit on the command center," Commander Zekthal reported. "Criminal communication network is down." But the smaller ships scattered throughout the field were proving more difficult to catch. They darted between asteroids, using the rough terrain to avoid the larger Alliance and hegemony vessels. "Joint Command," called Captain Kim Tae-hoon from the Alliance cruiser Busan's Thunder. "Criminal ships are trying to reach hyperspace jump point Alpha 7. We need intercept coordinates." Hana's fingers flew across her controls, calculating trajectories and timing. "Alliance Destroyer Group 3, adjust course to heading 27 Mark 4. You'll intercept the fleeing ships in 47 seconds. "Understood. Joint Command. Adjusting course now." The precision required was incredible. She was coordinating the movements of ships that had never worked together before, using weapon systems she had only read about in technical manuals, all while ensuring that Alliance and hegemony forces didn't accidentally fire on each other in the confusion of battle. "Hegemony Assault Squadron, criminal fighters are approaching your position from bearing 88 Mark 3. Recommend defensive pattern Delta." "Confirmed, Joint Command. Engaging defensive pattern Delta." Lieutenant Jang Hyuk's excited voice came through her earpiece. "Hana, we're intercepting surrender transmissions from multiple criminal ships. The ones that aren't trying to run are giving up." That was better news than she had dared hope for. Capturing some of the criminals alive would provide evidence of the conspiracy and help prevent future manipulation attempts. But not all the criminal forces were surrendering. A group of heavily armed converted freighters was making a desperate run toward the edge of the system, hoping to escape into the lawless regions beyond either government's control. "Joint Command," reported Captain Song Jinwoo from the Alliance fast attack ship Soul Sword. "Criminal convoy is approaching hyperspace jump point Beta 4. They'll escape in 3 minutes unless we can stop them." Hana studied the tactical display. The escaping ships were fast and well armed. but they were also heading straight toward a position where Alliance and Hegemony forces could catch them in a crossfire. "All ships prepare for coordinated intercept," she announced. "Alliance Squadron 7 will attack from port side. Hegemony Squadron 4 will attack from starboard. Fire on my mark to avoid friendly fire incidents." The next 60 seconds required every bit of skill and concentration Hana had developed over her years of study. She had to coordinate the approach of two different squadrons using completely different tactical doctrines, time their weapons fire to the split second, and ensure that the fleeing criminals were caught in the crossfire without any friendly ships being hit. "Alliance Squadron 7, you are approaching optimal firing position. Confirmed Joint Command, weapons locked on target. Hegemony Squadron 4, adjust approach angle by 2 degrees to avoid Alliance firing solution." "Understood, Joint Command." Angle adjusted. The escaping criminal ships were almost at the hyperspace jump point. In 30 seconds, they would disappear into the void and carry news of the failed operation to other criminal organizations throughout the galaxy. "All ships, fire." The crossfire was devastating and perfect. Alliance laser cannons struck the criminal ships from one side while Hegemony plasma weapons hit them from the other. The converted freighters, tough enough to survive pirate raids but not built for real military combat, broke apart under the coordinated assault. "Targets neutralized," reported Captain Song. "No survivors detected." Hegemony Squadron 4 confirms. "All criminal vessels in this sector have been destroyed or captured." Hana allowed herself a moment to breathe as the immediate battle came to an end. Around the Kethmore system, Alliance and Hegemony ships were mopping up the remaining criminal forces. Some had surrendered, others had been destroyed trying to fight or flee. But the criminal organization that had nearly started an interstellar war was finished. Dr. Choi Mina's proud voice came through her private channel. "Hana, preliminary reports show that you've just coordinated the most successful joint military operation in recorded galactic history. 0 friendly fire incidents, minimal casualties, and complete mission success." Commander Kim Woo-jin added his congratulations. The Soul's Pride monitored the entire operation. "Your tactical coordination was flawless. I've never seen anything like it." But it was Chancellor Morthak's formal statement that meant the most to Hana. Translator Lee Hana, on behalf of the Hegemony High Command and all our people, I thank you for preventing a war that would have destroyed both our civilizations. Your skill and dedication have proven that cooperation between our governments is not only possible, but beneficial to all. Admiral Kavreth approached her console as the last criminal ships were being secured. His scales had shifted to a deep gold color that Hana had never seen before. She quickly consulted her xenobiology database and discovered that gold scales indicated the highest form of respect that Skarn could show to another being. "Translator," he said formally, "I owe you an apology. We all do. We dismissed you as unimportant when you were the most qualified person in the galaxy to solve this crisis." "I was just doing my job, Admiral," Hana replied quietly. "No," Admiral Kavreth said firmly. "Your job was to translate languages. What you did today was translate the future. You took two civilizations that were about to destroy each other and taught them how to work together." Chancellor Ixara's crystal form chimed with harmonic tones that indicated deep satisfaction. "The Alliance Council will need to reconsider many of our assumptions about human capabilities and about the importance of truly listening to all voices, regardless of their source." As the immediate crisis passed, Hana found herself facing a new challenge, helping to establish permanent cooperation protocols between Alliance and Hegemony forces. The joint operation had been so successful that both governments wanted to explore further military and scientific collaboration. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today she had prevented a war and saved millions of lives by doing what she did best, making sure that everyone understood what everyone else was really saying. Park Do-yun appeared at her console with a cup of coffee and a tired smile. "So," he said, "I guess they won't be laughing at the human translator anymore." Hana accepted the coffee gratefully and looked around the command center. Alliance and Hegemony officers were working side by side, planning joint patrols and sharing intelligence about other potential threats. The atmosphere of cooperation and mutual respect was something that would have been unimaginable just days before. Maybe not, she agreed. But I hope they remember that the most important weapon in any conflict isn't firepower or technology. It's the ability to understand what your enemies are really trying to accomplish, and sometimes the wisdom to realize that they don't have to. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Hana found herself at the center of the largest military coordination effort in galactic history. The Alliance Council chambers had been transformed into a joint command center with holographic displays showing the positions of Alliance and Hegemony fleets throughout the border region. She sat at a massive communication console that Park Do-hyun and his technical team had assembled from equipment borrowed from a dozen different species. Multiple screens surrounded her, each one showing different types of data. Alliance fleet positions in blue, Hegemony forces in green, and the suspected location of the criminal organization's ships in red. Commander Kim Woojin's voice came through, her earpiece from the Soul's Pride. Hana, the Alliance battle groups are approaching the original target coordinates. We need to redirect them toward the Kethmore system without alerting the criminal forces that were coming. That was easier, said Van Dun. Both Alliance and Hegemony fleets were using their normal communication channels, which the criminal organization had been monitoring through stolen equipment. Any sudden change in plans would warn them that their scheme had been discovered. We'll have to use backup communication frequencies, Hana decided. Military commanders always have emergency channels for situations when their primary systems are compromised. Chancellor Morthak appeared on her main communication screen. Translator, our fleet commanders are reluctant to trust Alliance forces. Many of them have been preparing to fight your ships for weeks. I understand, Chancellor, Hana replied in perfect formal Hegemony diplomatic language. But time is running out. If we don't coordinate this operation perfectly, both of our civilizations will be at war within 2 hours. Admiral Kavrath approached her station, his scales shifting between orange and red as he struggled with the unprecedented situation. Translator, I have led Skarn military forces for 30 years, but I have never attempted a joint operation with a former enemy. How do we make this work? Hana looked up at the towering reptilian commander. We start simple. Basic coordination, protocols, ship positions, target identification, firing solutions. Once both fleets are comfortable working together, we can attempt more complex maneuvers. She opened communication channels to both fleets simultaneously. Her fingers flew across the control panels as she established translation protocols for real-time tactical communication. Alliance Battle Group Alpha. This is Alliance Command. New mission parameters are being transmitted on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. At the same time, she transmitted to the Hegemony forces. Hegemony. Defense Fleet Prime, this is Hegemony High Command. Joint Operation Authorization codes are being transmitted on Secure Channel 99 Beta. The responses came back immediately, and Hana's heart sank. Both fleets were confused and suspicious. Captain Ro Seonghwa from the Alliance flagship sent a worried message. Hana, the fleet commanders want confirmation from Admiral Kavrath himself. They're not sure they can trust orders coming through a translator. Similar concerns came from the Hegemony fleet. Their commanders wanted direct authorization from Chancellor Morthak before they would coordinate with Alliance forces. This isn't working, Admiral Kavrath said grimly. The chain of command is too complicated. Too many people need to approve every decision. Hana stared at the tactical displays showing both fleets hesitating at the edge of the Kethmore system. The criminal organization's ships were scattered throughout the asteroid fields, probably preparing to flee once the war they had engineered began in earnest. We need a different approach, she said suddenly. What if we don't try to command both fleets separately? What if we combine them into a single joint force with a single command structure? Chancellor Ixara's crystal form flickered with uncertainty. That has never been attempted. Alliance and Hegemony military doctrines are fundamentally different. But the basic principles are the same, Hana insisted. Ships need to know where to go and what to shoot at. Everything else is just details. She activated a new communication protocol, one she had designed during her sleepless preparation over the past few days. Instead of trying to translate between two separate command structures, she created a simplified tactical language that both sides could understand. All ships, Alliance and Hegemony. This is Joint Operations Command, she announced. You are now operating under unified tactical control. Acknowledged by ship designation and current position. The response was immediate chaos. Dozens of ships from both fleets tried to respond at once, their transmissions overlapping and interfering with each other. But slowly, order emerged from the confusion. Alliance Captain Kim Tae-hoon from the cruiser Busan's Thunder was the first to adapt to the new system. Joint Command, this is Alliance Heavy Cruiser Designation Alpha 7, position confirmed at Grid 449. A Hegemony commander followed. Joint Command, this is Hegemony Battle Cruiser Designation Beta 3, position confirmed at Grid 452. One by one, both fleets began reporting to Hana's unified command system. She found herself coordinating the movements of over 200 warships from two different civilizations that had been preparing to destroy each other just hours before. Dr. Choi Mina's voice came through her private channel. Hana, you're doing something that military historians said was impossible. How are you managing to coordinate two completely different fleet doctrines? I'm not trying to coordinate their doctrines, Hana replied while simultaneously processing status reports from dozens of ships. I'm creating a new language that both sides can understand. Simple, direct, no room for misinterpretation. Lieutenant Jang Hyok's urgent transmission interrupted her explanation. Hana, the criminal organization is detecting the fleet movements. They're starting to scatter. We need to move now or they'll escape. Hana looked at the tactical display. The criminal ships were indeed beginning to flee their asteroid base, heading toward hyperspace jump points that would take them to other lawless systems. But the Alliance and Hegemony fleets were still getting used to working together. Half the ships were in position, but the others were still adjusting their formations and testing the new communication protocols. Admiral Kavrith, she called out, we need to attack now with the ships that are ready, or we'll lose the element of surprise entirely. The Skarn commander's scales shifted to bright orange. Translator, a partial attack with poorly coordinated forces could be a disaster. Ships could fire on each other by mistake. And if we wait for perfect coordination, the criminals escape and we still end up at war when their next provocation succeeds, Hana replied. Chancellor Morthak's holographic image leaned forward. What do you recommend, Translator Lee? Hana studied the tactical displays, calculating distances, weapon ranges, and ship capabilities. Her years of studying alien psychology had taught her how different species made decisions under pressure. The Skarn preferred overwhelming force. The Hegemony favored precise, calculated strikes. She needed to find a plan that satisfied both approaches. We divide the target area into sectors, she said, uploading her plan to both fleets simultaneously. Alliance forces take the outer perimeter, using your superior speed to prevent escapes. Hegemony forces attack the main base directly, using your heavier weapons to neutralize the command center. The coordination requirements would be enormous, Admiral Kavrith pointed out. Every ship movement would need to be perfectly timed. That's what I'm here for, Hana said simply. She opened communication channels to every ship in both fleets. Her voice would carry to thousands of military personnel who had never heard of her until this moment. All ships, this is Joint Operations Command. You are about to participate in the first combined Alliance Hegemony military operation in galactic history. The target is a criminal organization that has been manipulating both our governments into war. Your success will prevent millions of deaths and establish a new era of cooperation between our peoples. She paused for a moment, looking around the command center at the faces of beings who had put their trust in a human translator they had ignored and dismissed just days before. All ships prepare for coordinated assault. Attack begins in 30 seconds on my command. 2 hours after Hana sent her message to the Hegemony High Command, her communication system chimed with an incoming transmission on the highest priority diplomatic channel. Her heart pounded as she opened the message. Chancellor Morthak himself was responding, using the most formal and respectful Hegemony diplomatic language. The message was brief but shocking. Translator Lee Hana, your evidence matches intelligence we have gathered independently. We propose immediate joint session to coordinate response. Time is critical. Hana stared at the screen in amazement. The leader of the hegemony government was taking her seriously when her own alliance council had dismissed her as a fantasizing translator. Within an hour, she found herself in an unprecedented situation. A three-way conference between herself, the Alliance Council leadership, and Hegemony High Command. The emergency session was held in the Council's most secure communication chamber, with quantum encryption protecting every word. Chancellor Morthak appeared as a hologram at one end of the table. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. His species, the Kethmari, were known for their analytical minds and careful diplomatic approach. Honorable Alliance delegates, Chancellor Morthak began in accented but clear Standard Galactic. We have reviewed Translator Lee Hana's evidence alongside our own intelligence reports. The pattern is unmistakable. He activated his own holographic displays, showing data from hegemony space. Red markers indicated locations where mercenary groups had been gathering. Green lines showed stolen communication equipment being moved through civilian trade routes, and yellow zones marked areas where normal government authority had been mysteriously weak. Criminal organizations have been operating in our territory for months, Chancellor Morthak continued, but we believed they were simply taking advantage of reduced security along the border regions. We did not realize they were part of a coordinated effort to provoke war between our governments. Admiral Kavareth's scales shifted to a dark orange color that Hana had learned indicated confusion and worry. Are you saying these raids were not authorized by your government? The raids were carried out by hired criminals using stolen hegemony identification codes and forged military authorizations, Chancellor Morthak replied. My government has been investigating these activities, but we had not connected them to the border incidents until Translator Lee provided her linguistic analysis. Chancellor Ixara's crystal form flickered rapidly as she processed the information. If this is true, then our planned military response would be attacking innocent targets. Worse than that, Chancellor Morthak said grimly. Our intelligence indicates that your planned attack locations were somehow known to the criminal organization. They have convinced our border defense commanders that your strike is the opening move of a full invasion. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Major Yoon Tae-hyung, who served as military liaison aboard the Alliance flagship, confirmed their worst fears through a secure transmission to Hana. The hegemony home fleet is already moving, his message read. Not toward the border positions. We plan to attack, but toward Alliance civilian colonies. They think we're about to invade their territory, so they're planning a preemptive strike against our population centers. Hana spoke up from her position at the translator's station. Honorable delegates, the criminal organization has been using stolen Alliance communication equipment to monitor our military planning. They know exactly when and where Admiral Kavareth's attack will occur. She displayed her analysis of the stolen communication arrays, showing how the equipment could be used to intercept and decode military transmissions across vast distances. They've been feeding information to both sides, she continued, convincing each government that the other is preparing for a major attack. The result will be a massive war that destroys both civilizations, while criminals raid abandoned colonies and steal whatever they want. Dr. Nam Ji-hoon's voice joined the conversation through a secure channel from Earth. The psychological profile suggests a sophisticated operation run by someone with detailed knowledge of both Alliance and hegemony military doctrine. This isn't random piracy. It's a carefully planned campaign to destabilize the entire region. Chancellor Morthak nodded, gravely. Our analysis reaches the same conclusion, but identifying the problem is easier than solving it. Both of our governments have military forces already committed to operations that begin in less than 4 hours. Ambassador Veltar spoke up from the Aryan delegation. Can the operations be cancelled? Admiral Kavareth's scales shifted to deep red. 3 Alliance battle groups are already in hyperspace, approaching their target coordinates. Recalling them now would require direct orders from the highest levels of government. Our border defense fleets face the same problem, Chancellor Morthak added. They have been told that invasion is imminent. Convincing them to stand down will require absolute proof that the threat is not real. Hana looked around the chamber, at the faces of beings who had spent their careers preparing for war, but had never faced a situation like this. Military doctrine taught them how to fight enemies, not how to avoid fighting friends who had been tricked into believing they were enemies. Captain An Ji-young's voice came through from the human destroyer Incheon's blade, which was part of Admiral Kavrith's strike force. Hana, we're detecting unusual activity in the target systems. There are ships there that don't match standard hegemony military configurations. What kind of ships? Hana asked. Modified civilian vessels, armed merchant ships, converted mining platforms. The kind of jury-rigged fleet that pirates and mercenaries would use. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. They're not just trying to start a war, Hana said. They're positioning their own forces to take advantage of the chaos. While Alliance and Hegemony fleets destroy each other, the criminal organization will seize control of the contested border regions. Chancellor Morthak's expression darkened. Our intelligence suggests the criminal leadership is based in the Kethmore system, a lawless region that neither government has been able to control effectively. If we could strike at their real base of operations, Admiral Kavrith mused, we could eliminate the threat without triggering a larger war. But that would require perfect coordination between Alliance and Hegemony forces, Chancellor Ixara pointed out. Our military doctrines are completely different. Our ships use incompatible communication systems. The logistics would be nearly impossible. Hana felt a strange calm settle over her as she realized what needed to happen. Not impossible, just difficult. She looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates and military officers. These were beings who had spent decades learning to distrust and fight each other. Now they needed to work together with only hours to prepare. I can coordinate the communication between fleets, she said quietly. The chamber went silent. Ambassador, Kelmon's translator rendered his response as surprised gurgling. The human translator thinks she can command a military operation? Not command, Hana corrected. Translate. Every order, every status report, every tactical adjustment needs to be communicated perfectly between forces that don't speak the same language or use the same procedures. Admiral Kavrith studied her thoughtfully. The margin for error would be 0. One mistranslated order could result in Alliance and Hegemony ships firing on each other instead of the enemy. I know, Hana replied, but I'm the only person in this room who speaks both Alliance standard and formal Hegemony military language fluently enough to handle real-time tactical communication. Chancellor Morthak leaned forward in his holographic projection. Translator Lee, what you are proposing would require split-second decisions affecting the lives of thousands of military personnel from both sides. Hana met his gaze steadily. Yes, sir. It would. Dr. Choi Mina's voice came through the communication channel, proud and worried at the same time. Hana, are you sure about this? Hana thought about all the times she had been dismissed, ignored, and laughed at by beings who thought humans were too primitive to contribute anything meaningful to galactic civilization. She thought about the war that would destroy millions of lives if the criminal organization succeeded in their plan. Most of all, she thought about the quiet human colony worlds that would burn if the Hegemony fleet launched their preemptive strike against Alliance civilian targets. I'm sure, she said. While the Alliance Council continued their heated debates about Admiral Kavrith's military plans, Hana worked through the night with her human team. She had barely eaten or slept in the past week, living on coffee and determination. Her small quarters were now filled with screens, data tablets, and communication equipment that Park Do-hyun had quietly borrowed from the human delegation's technical supplies. Lieutenant Jang Hyok's voice crackled through the secure channel from the Souls. Pride, Hana, you need to see this immediately. We've intercepted more communications that aren't going through official Hegemony military networks. Hana rubbed her tired eyes and focused on the new data streaming across her main screen. More pigeon communications, but this time she could see routing information that showed where the messages were coming from. Hyok, these signals are originating from inside Hegemony space, but they're not coming from military bases or government facilities. That's what caught our attention, Hyok replied. They're coming from civilian shipping routes, mining stations, and trade outposts, places where independent contractors and hired guns would gather to look for work. The picture was becoming clearer, but it was also becoming more frightening. Someone with significant resources was hiring mercenaries and criminals from throughout hegemony space to carry out these attacks. But they were doing it in a way that made it look like official government policy. Captain Song Mira's voice joined, the secure channel from the Busan Hope. Hana, our technical teams have finished analyzing the stolen equipment. The quantum communication arrays they took weren't random selections. Someone gave the raiders a very specific shopping list. What kind of list? Hana asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. The components for a military-grade coordination network. Long-range sensors, encryption processors, signal boosters, everything you'd need to command a large fleet across multiple star systems simultaneously. Dr. Choi Mina's tired face appeared on Hana's video screen. I've been analyzing the psychological profile of whoever is behind this. The pattern suggests a high-level military mind with access to detailed intelligence about both alliance and hegemony defense networks. Someone who knows how both governments think and react, Hana said slowly. More than that, someone who has studied both militaries closely enough to predict exactly how they'll respond to specific provocations. Hana stared at the data flowing across her screens. Communication intercepts, equipment theft reports, tactical analyses, psychological profiles, it all pointed to the same terrifying conclusion. They know about Admiral Kavareth's attack plan, she said suddenly. The channel went quiet for a moment. Then Dr. Mina spoke carefully. What makes you think that? Look at the timing. The raids have been increasing in frequency over the past week, just as the Council's military discussions became more serious. Someone is pushing the Alliance toward a military response. But how could they know our plans? Captain Song asked. Alliance military communications are heavily encrypted. Hana's mind raced through the possibilities. Then she remembered something that made her blood run cold. The stolen communication equipment. Some of those raids hit Alliance intelligence outposts. What if they didn't just steal our communication arrays? What if they've been listening to our planning sessions? Commander Kim Woojin's voice cut into the channel, urgent and worried. Hana, we just detected massive fleet movements in the core hegemony systems, but they're not moving to defend the border positions that Admiral Kavareth plans to attack. Where are they going? Hana asked, though she was afraid she already knew. Toward Alliance homeworlds. It looks like they're preparing for a counteroffensive against our civilian populations. The full scope of the trap became clear. The rogue faction had been using stolen Alliance communication technology to monitor military planning. They knew exactly when and where Admiral Kavareth would strike. More importantly, they had used that information to convince the legitimate hegemony government that the Alliance was preparing for a full-scale invasion of their territory. Dr. Nam, Jihoon's voice joined the discussion from Earth's Strategic Analysis Center. It's a false flag operation designed to trigger a massive interstellar war. Both governments think they're responding to aggression from the other side, but they're actually being manipulated by a third party that benefits from the chaos. Who would benefit from a war between the Alliance and the hegemony? Hana asked. Pirates, weapons dealers, slave traders, Dr. Nam replied grimly. All the criminal organizations that thrive when governments are too busy fighting each other to maintain law and order. During a major war, they could seize control of entire star systems. Hana looked at the chronometer on her wall. 18 hours until Admiral Kavareth's fleet would jump to hyperspace and attack the hegemony border positions. Once that attack began, the carefully orchestrated chain of events would be unstoppable. She gathered her evidence and rushed to request an emergency session with the Council. The response came back within minutes. Denied. The Council was in final military briefings and would not be interrupted for translation concerns. Desperate, Hana tried a different approach. She sent urgent messages to every delegate's personal communication system, attaching her complete analysis and begging them to review the evidence before supporting the military strike. Most didn't reply. Those who did sent brief, dismissive responses. Chancellor Ixara's message was typical. The human translator's linguistic theories are interesting but irrelevant to military necessity. Ambassador Kelmon was even more blunt. Stop wasting the Council's time with conspiracy fantasies. Only one delegate showed any interest. Ambassador Veltar from the Aryan gas giant colonies sent a longer response. Your analysis raises troubling questions, but Admiral Kavrith's battle plans are already in motion. The political cost of canceling the operation would be enormous. Hana realized that even if some delegates had doubts, they were too afraid of looking weak or indecisive to change course now. The momentum toward war had become unstoppable through political fear rather than military necessity. Captain Ro Seonghwa contacted her through encrypted channels from the Alliance flagship. Hana, I've been quietly sharing your analysis with other human officers throughout the fleet. We're all seeing the same patterns in the intelligence data. Can you convince Admiral Kavrith to delay the attack? I tried. He says the political decision has been made and his job is to execute orders, not question them. But Hana, some of the non-human officers are starting to ask questions too. Your linguistic analysis is solid, and the tactical data supports your conclusions. It won't matter unless we can reach the Council leadership before they give the final attack order. Hana spent the next several hours trying every possible channel to reach someone with enough authority to stop the approaching disaster. She contacted military officers, diplomatic staff, intelligence analysts, and even maintenance workers who might have access to key officials. Most ignored her. Others listened politely, but explained that they didn't have the authority to interfere with major policy decisions. As the hours passed, Hana watched helplessly as both sides prepared for war. Alliance battle groups moved into position near the hegemony border. Hegemony fleets massed for their planned counterstrike against Alliance civilian targets. Lieutenant Jang Hyok reported increasing communication traffic between the rogue faction's hired mercenaries. They were excited about the coming chaos, already making plans for which systems to raid once the two major governments were busy destroying each other. With 6 hours remaining until the attack, Hana made a decision that would either save millions of lives or end her career forever. She activated her translator access codes, permissions granted for routine diplomatic communications, and composed a message in formal hegemony high command protocol. Her years of studying their language and culture had taught her exactly how to address their government with proper respect and urgency. The message was simple but crucial. Honorable Hegemony High Command, I am Lee Hana, Cultural Translator for the Galactic Alliance Council. I have evidence that both our governments are being manipulated into war by criminal elements operating within your territory. I request immediate dialogue to prevent unnecessary bloodshed between our peoples. She transmitted the message through diplomatic channels, knowing that using her access codes for unauthorized communication was probably treason under Alliance law. The response came faster than she had expected. Translator Lee Hana, the message began in perfect formal hegemony script. This is Chancellor Morthak of the Hegemony High Command. We have been aware of unusual mercenary activity in our territory but did not realize it was connected to the Alliance border incidents. We are willing to examine your evidence if it can prevent the approaching conflict. Hana's hands shook as she prepared to transmit everything she had learned. If she was wrong about the rogue faction, she would be giving military intelligence to the enemy just hours before a major battle. If she was right, she might be able to prevent a war that would destroy both civilizations. She took a deep breath and pressed the transmission key. 3 days passed and the emergency meetings continued. Every few hours, new reports came in about hegemony attacks on Alliance territory. The attacks were getting bolder and more frequent. The delegates grew more angry and scared with each report. Hana barely slept during those 3 days. She spent her nights in the small quarters assigned to the human delegation, surrounded by screens showing alien text and tactical data. Her eyes burned from staring at the displays and her back ached from hunching over her desk, but she couldn't stop working. Something was wrong with the whole situation, and she was the only one who seemed to notice. Commander Kim Woo-jin called her on the secure channel at 3 in the morning on the 4th day. The Soul's Pride was patrolling the border regions watching for more attacks. Hana, you need to hear this, Woo-jin said. His voice sounded tired and worried. We've been analyzing the attack patterns and they don't make any military sense. Hana rubbed her tired eyes. What do you mean? Look at the targets, Wujin explained. They hit supply depots and communication relays, but they leave the main defensive installations completely alone. If I wanted to invade Alliance space, I would destroy the big weapons platforms and military bases first. These raiders are ignoring the most important targets. That's because they're not trying to invade, Hana said slowly. They're doing something else. She pulled up the tactical maps on her screen. Red dots marked every attack over the past 2 weeks. When she looked at them individually, they seemed random, but when she connected them with lines, a pattern started to emerge. The attacks formed a rough circle around 3 major Alliance communication hubs. Someone was isolating those hubs, cutting their connections to the outer colonies and smaller worlds. Commander, can you send me the communication logs from your ship? I want to see how long it takes messages to travel between different parts of Alliance space now compared to 2 weeks ago. Sending the data now, Wujin replied. But Hana, Admiral Kavrith is planning a major strike against hegemony border positions. He wants to hit them hard before they can attack any more of our stations. Hana felt a chill run down her spine. When? 2 days from now, he's assembling 3 full battle groups. It's going to be the largest Alliance military operation in 50 years. After Wujin ended the call, Hana sat staring at her screens for a long time. The communication data showed exactly what she had feared. Messages that used to travel across Alliance space in hours now took days. The outer colonies were becoming isolated from the central government. Someone was breaking down the Alliance's ability to coordinate and respond to threats. At dawn, Dr. Choi Mina called from Earth. The older woman looked even more tired than usual, her gray hair sticking up at odd angles. Hana, I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of the attack patterns, Mina said. These raids aren't about territory or resources. They're about testing response times and communication networks. I know, Hana said. But who would want to do that, and why? Think about it, Mina continued. If you wanted to attack the Alliance, what would you need to know first? Hana considered the question. How fast they could respond, how well their military could coordinate, whether the outer colonies would get help from the core worlds in time. Exactly. Someone is gathering intelligence for a much larger operation, and they're making it look like random hegemony raids, so the Alliance will blame the wrong enemy. Hana spent the day analyzing every piece of data she could find. She pulled communication records, tactical reports, diplomatic messages, and intelligence summaries. She fed everything into her translation programs, looking for patterns that others had missed. The breakthrough came at sunset. Lieutenant Zhang, Hyuk, who worked signals intelligence aboard the Soul's Pride, sent her a batch of intercepted transmissions. Most were the usual military chatter, status reports, supply requests, patrol schedules, but buried in the routine traffic was something strange. Hana, Hyuk's message read, these transmissions aren't going through official hegemony channels. They're using civilian shipping frequencies. Hana opened the files and ran them through her language analysis programs. The text was in hegemony script, but it wasn't formal military language. It was rough, simple, almost like baby talk compared to official hegemony communications. She had seen this kind of simplified language before, during her studies at Seoul National University. It was called Pidgin, a basic version of a language that different species used when they needed to communicate but didn't share a common tongue. Traders used Pidgin. Smugglers used Pidgin. Mercenaries and pirates used Pidgin. Official military forces did not use Pidgin. Hana's hands shook as she realized what she was looking at. These weren't communications between hegemony military officers. These were messages between civilian contractors, smugglers, and hired guns. Someone was paying non-military groups to attack Alliance stations and make it look like official hegemony raids. Captain Song Mira called her an hour later. Song commanded a human medical frigate called the Busan Hope, which had been helping with rescue operations at the attacked stations. Hana, Our medical teams have been analyzing the wreckage from the raids, Song reported. The attackers used standard weapons, but they also stole specific equipment from each station. What kind of equipment? Quantum communication arrays, the expensive ones used for long-range coordination between star systems. Someone has been collecting the parts needed to build a massive communication network. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, and Hana didn't like the picture they were forming. Someone was preparing for a large-scale military operation. They were testing Alliance response times, cutting communication links, and stealing the equipment they would need to coordinate their own forces across vast distances. And they were setting up the hegemony to take the blame when the real attack came. Hana gathered all her evidence and requested time to address the council. The response came back within an hour, 10 minutes, after Admiral Kavreth finished presenting his battle plans. She walked into the council chambers that evening feeling like she was carrying the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. The delegates were excited and aggressive, ready for war. Admiral Kavreth's holographic displays showed the 3 battle groups that would strike deep into hegemony space. When her turn came to speak, Hana walked to the central platform on unsteady legs. She looked around at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at her. Most looked impatient or amused. None looked like they expected to hear anything important from the human translator. "Honorable delegates," she began, "I have discovered evidence that these attacks are not what they appear to be." She uploaded her analysis to the main display. The pigeon communications appeared above the table, with her translations and explanations highlighted in bright colors. These messages were not written by hegemony military officers, Hana continued. They were written by civilian contractors and mercenaries using a simplified trade language. Someone is hiring non-military groups to attack our stations. Ambassador Kelamon's translator rendered his response as dismissive gurgling. More human fantasies. The attacks are real regardless of who carries them out. But it matters who's behind them, Hana insisted. The stolen equipment, the timing of the attacks, the communication patterns, they all suggest someone is preparing for a much larger operation. Chancellor Ixara's crystal form flickered with annoyance. Even if your wild theories were correct, what would you have us do? Ignore the attacks? I'm saying we need to find out who's really behind them before we start a war with the hegemony, Hana replied. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates laughed. Others shouted angry questions. Admiral Kavreth's scales turned bright red again. "Translator," he roared, "return to your duties and leave military matters to military professionals." As Hana walked back to her seat, she heard the delegates discussing Admiral Kavreth's battle plans with renewed enthusiasm. Her warnings had been dismissed as the fantasies of an inexperienced human. But Captain Ro Seonghwa, a human officer, serving on Admiral Kavreth's staff, sent her a private message as the session ended. "Hana," the message read, "I've been quietly checking your analysis against our own intelligence data. The fleet positioning data supports your conclusions. Something big is coming and we're about to make it worse." Hana looked around the chamber as the delegates filed out, talking excitedly about the coming military strike. In 2 days, 3 Alliance battle groups would attack hegemony border positions. The hegemony would have no choice but to respond, with force. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, the real enemy was waiting for exactly that to happen. Hana sat at the far end of the massive round table in the Galactic Alliance Council chambers. The room was huge, with a ceiling so high she could barely see the top. Around the table sat creatures from dozens of different worlds. The Vectar looked like walking crystal sculptures that sparkled when they moved. The Molari were large slug-like beings with wet, shiny skin and multiple eyes. The Skarn were tall reptiles with sharp claws and scales that changed color when they got angry. All of them barely looked at Hana. She was human, and humans were new to this galactic community. Earth had only been discovered 5 years ago, and most aliens still thought of humans as primitive creatures who had just learned to travel between stars. The Alliance had given Hana the job of cultural translator, which sounded important but really meant she sat quietly and helped other species understand each other's languages. Hana didn't mind being ignored. It gave her time to study and learn. She had always been good with languages, even as a child in Seoul. Her parents had been proud when she got into Seoul National University to study alien languages. They had been even prouder when she was chosen to represent Earth at these important meetings. But now, sitting in this room full of creatures who thought she was just a secretary with a fancy title, Hana sometimes wondered if her parents would still be proud. Admiral Kavreth, the head of the Skarn military, slammed his clawed fist on the table. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. His scales turned bright red, which Hana knew meant he was very angry. "The border raids must stop," he roared. "The hegemony grows bolder each cycle, and still the council debates endlessly." The hegemony were another group of alien species, but they were not part of the alliance. They controlled space on the other side of the galaxy, and lately they had been attacking alliance ships and stations near the border between their territories. Park Do-yun, Hana's colleague from Earth, spoke quietly into her earpiece from the observation deck above. Do-hyun worked in communications and was one of the few people who understood how smart Hana really was. "Hana," he whispered, "the computer analysis shows something strange about the hegemony's last message. The way they wrote it doesn't match their usual style." Hana looked down at her tablet screen. Lines of alien text scrolled past in different colors: green for Skarn language, blue for Vectar crystal speak, purple for Molari slime script. But it was the red text that caught her attention. That was hegemony military language, and something about it looked wrong. She had spent years learning how different alien species put words together. Each species had its own way of thinking, and that showed up in how they used language. The Skarn were direct and forceful. The Vectar were precise and mathematical. The Molari were emotional and flowing. But the hegemony military was always formal and proper, following strict rules about how officers should write. This message was different. The grammar was sloppy. Words were in the wrong order. It looked like someone who didn't speak hegemony very well had written it. Chancellor, Ixara of the Vectar delegation spoke up. Her voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with computer sounds. Perhaps the humans could contribute something more substantial than mere translation services. Laughter rippled around the chamber. Ambassador Kelmon from the Molari made a gurgling sound that his translator turned into a chuckle. Even some of the smaller species that Hana had been trying to befriend looked amused. Hana felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her face calm. She had learned long ago that getting angry would only make things worse. Instead, she focused on her tablet, running the suspicious hegemony text through her analysis programs. The patterns were clear once she knew what to look for. This wasn't written by a hegemony military officer. The mistakes were too specific, too consistent. Someone else had written this message and tried to make it look official. But who and why? Commander Kim Woojin's voice came through her private channel. Woojin commanded a human observation ship called the Soul's Pride, and he was orbiting just outside the council station. "Hana, we're picking up more reports from the border," he said quietly. 3 more supply stations hit in the last day. But the attacks are strange. They're not hitting the important targets. Hana frowned. That didn't make sense. If the hegemony wanted to hurt the alliance, they would attack military bases and weapon factories. Why waste time on supply depots? "Commander," she whispered back, "can you send me the tactical data? I want to see the pattern." "Sending now," Woojin replied. "But Hana, be careful. The council is talking about a military response. Admiral Kavrith wants to hit back hard." The data appeared on Hana's screen. Red dots showed where the attacks had happened. At first glance, they looked random. But Hana had spent years looking, for patterns in language and patterns in space weren't so different. The attacks were all on communication stations and supply depots that served the outer colonies. Not the main worlds, not the big military bases. Just the quiet little outposts that kept messages flowing and supplies moving. Someone was cutting the Alliance's ability to talk to itself. Dr. Choi Mina appeared on Hana's private video channel. Mina was back on Earth, but she was one of the best experts on alien psychology in human space. She had wild gray hair and thick glasses, and she always looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Hana," Mina said. I've been studying the attack patterns you sent. This isn't random violence. Someone is testing the Alliance's response time and communication network. Testing for what? Hana asked quietly. I don't know yet. But whoever is doing this is learning how fast the Alliance can react to threats and how well different parts of the government can talk to each other during a crisis. Hana looked around the chamber. Admiral Kavreth was showing holographic battle plans to the other military officers. Chancellor Ixara was calculating something on a crystal tablet that glowed with mathematical symbols. Ambassador Kelman was arguing with a delegate from the gas giant world of Arios. None of them were paying attention to the quiet human translator in the corner. None of them had noticed that the enemy messages didn't sound right, or that the attacks were following a pattern that had nothing to do with military strategy. They were all preparing to fight the wrong war. Hana took a deep breath. She had always been good at staying quiet and observing, but sometimes you had to speak up, even if people didn't want to listen. She stood up slowly. The chamber was so big that her small human voice would never carry over the arguing aliens. She walked to the central speaking platform, her footsteps echoing on the metal floor. Honorable delegates, she said, pressing the button that would amplify her voice through the chamber's sound system. The room fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes, crystal formations, and sensor organs turned toward her. She could feel their surprise and annoyance like a physical weight. Admiral Kavreth's scales shifted to a darker red. Translator, he growled. We are discussing military matters? Yes, sir, Hana said politely. And I believe there may be something important that we're missing about these attacks. Chancellor Ixara's crystal form flickered with impatience. The human thinks she understands warfare better than our military commanders? More laughter filled the chamber, but Hana pressed on. She had been ignored and dismissed her entire time here, but she had also been watching and learning. She knew things that the others didn't, simply because they had never bothered to ask her what she thought. I don't understand warfare, Hana said honestly, but I understand communication, and the messages we've been receiving from the hegemony don't match their normal patterns. She uploaded her analysis to the main display screen. The alien text appeared in floating letters above the table, with her notes and comparisons highlighted in different colors. These messages weren't written by hegemony military officers, she continued. The grammar is wrong. The formal protocols are missing. Someone else wrote these and tried to make them look official. Ambassador Kelman gurgled dismissively. Even if that were true, what difference does it make? Ships are being destroyed, stations are being raided. It makes a difference, Hana said. Because if these aren't official hegemony attacks, then we're about to start a war with the wrong enemy. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates laughed, others argued. A few looked thoughtful, but Hana could see in their faces that most of them still thought she was just a human translator who was trying to sound important. They would learn differently soon enough.